We are not alone. You are watching Contact TV with your hosts, Leslie Mitchell-Clark
and Wes Roberts,
exploring ufology, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Contact TV. And I am your host. Do we say hostess anymore? I kind of like hostess. Is host better? All right. It sounds like a hostess cupcake, maybe. I don't know. We are your hosts, and I'm Leslie Mitchell-Clark.
And I'm Wes Roberts.
And we are so happy that you've joined us today. We are welcoming back to the program one of our very favorite guests, and I have to say someone who has been also a personal mentor to me in the work that I try to do. And we are talking about, of course, Kathleen Marden. And Kathleen is an author. She's an on-camera expert. She's a consultant. She's an international conference presenter, an experiencer advocate. I love that one. And an intergenerational experiencer, which I think is something we're going to be chatting about. She's also a hypnosis practitioner, and I bet she is. I know she's a wonderful one. Now, since 1990, Kathleen has really been focused on and has researched the perplexing nature of UFOs and also the non-human entities that are associated with highly advanced aerial vehicles via her own groundbreaking research, investigation, and experimentation. And Kathleen is also the 221 recipient of the International UFO Congress Lifetime Achievement Award. Wowie zowie. That's a biggie. And Kathleen has written many books, and we're going to be talking mainly today about her most recent book, which is called Forbidden Knowledge. And it is a personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. And I can't wait to get into that. Welcome, Kathleen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you today.
All right. And, but I think we probably should just get it out of the way here. Would you like to just explain for a little bit about your relationship to I think the ground zero contemporary ufology case of Betty and Barney Hill?
Well, I'm Betty and Barney Hill's niece. I was 13 years old when they had their experience. When I arrived home from school that day, my mother was on the phone with Betty, who was concerned because the craft had come so close to them that they were afraid they'd been contaminated. So then it was a search for what they needed to do. Yeah. And all of the evidence that they had, the magnetic field around the trunk of their vehicle. Within a couple of days, my family and I drove down to Betty's and Barney's house. It was about 20 miles from my childhood home. I heard the story myself from Betty, saw a little bit of the evidence, including the spots on the trunk of the car that hadn't been there. And, all I knew was that they had a close encounter with a flying saucer. It was so close to them in New Hampshire's White Mountains that they were concerned about the health implications.
Mm-hmm. I think there were long-range health implications, very probably. What do you think about that, Kathleen? Do you think that the beings appeared to be, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, but the beings seem to be primarily benevolent. Do you think that there were any long-term health risks that your aunt and your uncle experienced? And certainly your uncle passed away way too young.
That's true. And I cannot state that there were any long-term health effects on them. Initially, of course, Barney developed post-traumatic stress and had to see a psychiatrist in order to work through that. And Betty went with him, but it was more than 2 years after the event occurred, because when they initially wanted to have hypnosis, they were told to give it time, that they would remember more. And they actually did remember more over time. And before they saw Dr. Benjamin Simon, who was renowned in his field in terms of health, physical health. Betty developed a skin disorder, and the dog developed a fungus infection on her skin. And Betty was never certain if that was related to the event or not. She said that they also had some respiratory problems when they first arrived home. So I don't know if that was related. Certainly the emotional impact of it had a major change, caused a major change in their lives. And Betty became incredibly curious. She's a lot like me. We have to have the answers, no matter how long it takes, and do a lot of research and investigation. And that's what she did over her lifetime. Unfortunately, Barney died young. He was only 46 years old. But Barney had been in an explosion during World War II. In fact, I guess it was shrapnel scars on his chest. And I had a neighbor who was a medical doctor who was in the Middle Eastern War. And he ended up having a stroke. And he said it was the result of the percussion from the bomb that exploded near him. So Barney died from a massive cerebral hemorrhage. So it might have had something to do with that. I know he also suffered from high blood pressure, and it could have caused the vein or artery to burst.
Indeed.
So I'm not going to say it was the ETs who caused this.
Yes.
Betty lived to be 85 years old.
Yes.
She died from lung cancer, but she was a chain smoker.
Yes. There are a lot of pictures with her lighting up, man. There were a lot of pictures,
Absolutely.
bless her heart. Well, I think that as you say, it's impossible to, medically attach that, but maybe certainly in the case of Barney, who perhaps suffered more deeply with the experience, there may have been some informing of his physical body, but who knows. Now, was this this experience that happened when you were just a tween, as we say now, just a very young girl, but you did follow in Betty's footsteps. You're a social worker. Many people don't know that about you, as was Betty. And how do you think that translated into your involvement with the Mutual UFO Network?
Well, I developed an intense interest in what happened to my aunt and uncle. And I saw many of the early investigators. I met them. I was impressed by their work. Dr. Alan Hynek, Dr. Jacques Vallée, John Fuller, who was the author of the first book that was ever written about the case, and many more who took part in this investigation and the investigations of craft that were seen, and one that even landed across the street from my childhood home after this. So I was very impressed, and I thought that maybe I would like someday to do the type of work that they were doing. So when I went to college, I thought I would be a writer. And then my aunt talked me out of it. And she said, you'll never make a living as a writer. Do something practical. She said, I'm a social worker. You have a regular income, you have a retirement, you have medical, you have all of these things. And she said, it is the best thing I've ever done in my life. She absolutely loved her work. So I said, well, okay. I'll do what you tell me to do, because she's always been my mentor. Growing up, she and Barney were. And so I took her advice, and I studied social work, but my focus was on psychiatric social work. So I did an internship at the State Psychiatric Hospital when I was a student. And I thought that was the direction that my career was going to take. But certain things happened along the way. I moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, because my first husband was studying for his doctorate in the philosophy of psychiatry. It was the only program in the country of its kind. And I had to get a job immediately. I wanted a job in a psychiatric hospital, but they wouldn't hire me. They were afraid I was going to be injured in the men's ward, which is where I wanted to work. And I had worked in the men's ward in New Hampshire, and it was great. But I guess that being a country girl right off the farm, you might say, and walking into a very large city was different. So I volunteered for Ralph Nader for a while, and then I finally was able to get a job in the inner city. So, you know, sort of going from the frying pan to the fire in a sense. And but I loved it. It was wonderful, and I started doing graduate work in education at that point. I thought I'd be a school psychologist, but then I ended up leaving Cincinnati, and
As many have.
which was kind of crazy to give up a full scholarship, but I wanted to move on. I wanted to move on to other things.
Wes, do you have a question?
I do. Kathleen, I think you know I'm also an abductee and experiencer. And I wasn't certain of this until about 12 years ago. I had suspected it since the 1980s when I had a key event, but I wasn't sure till 12 years ago. When did you first know for yourself?
I was 17 when that UFO came in and landed on my grandparents' farm. And it was observed by a neighbor of ours who was a commercial pilot. My grandmother saw it as well. It was reported, and there was an investigator who came out and looked at the trace marks on the ground, physical trace marks. So I'm not sure if that was the first time. In hypnosis, I've remembered an incident that happened when I was 3 years old. But as far as conscious recall is concerned, my mother and I both remembered finding ourselves on craft. And I think it was probably that time.
Well, as I think the research has shown that it's rather unusual for someone who is an experiencer to have only one experience. You know, I mean, that's generally speaking, we are able to take experiencers back to, as you said, age 2 or 3, when things often begin in one form or another. I just wanted to ask you, I don't know the answer to this question. After, just for a moment to go back to Betty and Barney, after their primary experience, did anything that falls into the category of high strangeness ever happen to them after that event?
Yes, it absolutely did. And in Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, I write about some of those high strangeness events where, for example, someone was entering their house. The earrings that Betty was wearing on the night of the encounter actually showed up in a pile of leaves on their dining room table. I lived with Betty after Barney died, and there was some kind of psychological operation going on then, because I believed that it was Betty entering the house. I went up to greet her. This was about noontime or a little bit later, and she wasn't there. And I thought, oh, she just stopped in for a minute and left. So I went back to my apartment, and I heard crash, bang, loud noise. I ran up the stairs, and her front door was open, the hall door was open, a closet door was open, and her baseball bat was lying on the floor. And the front door to the house was open, the gate was open, and there was a man in a tan-colored suit running up the road. I mean, that's no common burglary.
Wow.
So somebody was in there to do something weird, and there were many weird things done, such as chairs just being arranged in a circle, such as her tax documents going missing and then returned to her a couple of months later. But the way they were returned was a weird thing. They were scattered in a trail all over her floor throughout her house. So someone was trying to push her over the edge, and she was such a stable, grounded person. That didn't happen. But she finally ended up getting one of the early security systems and had it wired into the police department. And then it stopped. But I know her phone was tapped as well. And after this experience, she and Barney started to have paranormal events that were taking place in their house too, like doors opening and closing on their own, lights blinking out, the thermostat automatically, because neither of them reset it, but going up to the highest possible temperature. There were orbs in my childhood home, things, poltergeist activity, that sort of thing that I wrote about in Forbidden Knowledge. But it all seems to be related to this UFO and ET contact that we were having.
Well, let's explore this a little bit farther, this relationship between metaphysical events and extraterrestrial contact. How do you think these things interact, or do they? Is it all the same thing? What do you think, Kathleen?
I really don't know. For years I've been attempting to determine if this is all one phenomena or if these are various phenomena within a wide range of interdimensional types of events that interdimensional can come into our realm and become very physical. And so we can be taken to craft, we can have physical examinations, we can have procedures done with physical entities in a physical environment. Yet those entities can then come into our environment later and be unseen by us. So I come to understand it, I think, in terms of dimension. And I've come to understand that maybe the poltergeist activity is just the very strong electrical energy that accompanies these entities. And I know that between the dimensions, I've been told this by a scientist, that at that veil, a membrane between the dimensions, there is a great deal of electromagnetic energy. So that's the way I understand it. I don't think of it as being negative in any way. It's just something that we're not accustomed to seeing. But, it also appears that this paranormal is actually normal, but something that most people haven't talked about because of the religious implications.
And of course, a lot of iconography from the religions, UFO experiences that are clearly UFO experiences are interpreted as either angelic or demonic encounters in that very tiny framework of our, accepted religions. So that is pretty fascinating. Wes, go ahead.
I would love to follow this up just a bit, if you don't mind, Kathleen. In all my experiences that I can identify as experiences, they have never once spoken to me with their mouths. And so I've always thought telepathy is built-in capability they have. I don't have it very well, but they have it. Is that part of what you're saying too? This is just a natural thing for them?
Telepathy, they say, is the universal language. So I know that some of them make sort of humming sounds or buzzing sounds when they speak to one another. That's been reported, but many are telepathic. And of course, they're telepathic when they're communicating with us, either through words that we understand or through images or visions, you might say.
Do you think that that's one of the criterion that the extraterrestrial beings are looking for in encounters? They're looking for humanoids who have a high PSI factor or are able to communicate in this way. Not, it's like musical ability. Some people can barely recognize a tune, and then we have Mozart. So there must be a big sliding scale on these abilities. And because as you have mentioned many times, the research shows that people who are having encounters are either psychically inclined to begin with or become more so as it goes on.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a question that I've asked is, how did you select people to take? And they said, well, initially, they would it was opportunistic. And someone was out on the backlands of the family farm, or they were hunting or fishing or driving in their car at night, whatever. But then they selected the genetic lines that they wanted. And if you follow the research, you'll find that many of these genetic lines have people who have the ability to be right-brained, as opposed to being more on the left brain side. Now, I've always been more on the left brain, although in my testing, it shows that I have an equal amount of both. But I found that in order to be able to communicate with them at will, I really have to get over into the right brain through meditation. And it has been a long process to learn how to do that. So, but yes, you'll find many people who are artists, who are actors, who do that type of work, and who are also experiencers. So it seems to be something that is highly valued by the majority of these non-humans.
It does, and maybe it's because it's something that they have lost along the way, our ability to express ourselves creatively in not in a non-linear kind of way, who knows? But Betty, what has, excuse me, not Betty, I've got Betty on the brain. Kathleen, tell me, what has motivated you now? Because you're really known, you work with Stanton Friedman, one of the most scientifically geared guys in the business. And what is happening now that you are coming forth with your own story as a healer, as a seeker?
Well, what is happening is that the federal government and agents of the federal government have come forward, the US government, with more and more information regarding their own studies. They're finally releasing some information. And I am so heartened by that. I know that for the most part, it's people who've worked in the Defense Department. So they're looking at this as a possible threat. So they're focusing more on probably the negative than the positive. But many of these individuals are experiencers themselves. I heard from Jim Semivan, who was in the CIA, had a very high level position, and is an experiencer of contact. And so information has been released that this is real, and that poltergeist activity is part of this, orbs, this paranormal part of it. And so I was heartened by this. And I thought that, it's about time, if I'm ever going to come forward with this, that I do it now because of the insight that I have and all of the research that I have done over the past 32 years. I've been aware of all of this for about 60 years, but really doing the research, the investigation for 32. And I was tired of not telling my own story, of not giving my own information that I have received. And I thought that I would never speak of the government study that was done back in 1954 by Wilbert Smith, initially from the Canadian government, a brilliant scientist, and Admiral Herbert Knowles, who was a high-level military official, and by others. The information went to Margaret Chase Smith, went to Dwight Eisenhower. And as a result of these communication experiments that were done and the interest of the federal government, and I have the FBI reports, I thought, there's more to this. I shouldn't consider it to be so taboo, which I had always thought of it as. Admiral Knowles' granddaughter gave me the communication, the correspondence files. So I had access to this information in 2010, but I thought it was so taboo that I didn't even begin to talk about it until recently. And that is what caused me to think, well, if scientists can do this kind of experiment, if governments can, why can't I? And that's why a team of researchers and I decided to take part in an experiment, a communication experiment with extraterrestrials who claim to be the Council of Eight, with a man, Kevin Briggs, who lives here in Florida, but grew up in the UK. He was a police officer in the UK. His wife is very grounded and worked as a college professor and in research at a university in the UK. So this is not something that is woo-woo. It was an experiment that a team of us carried out to determine whether or not this was real, or if Kevin was delusional, or if he was attempting to pull the wool over our eyes, or what was going on. And we received some very good evidence that convinced us that this was real. Now, I cannot say that the information that they gave us is from extraterrestrials. They claim it. There have been craft in the sky. We've seen many other things, including orbs. We have been able to feel that very strong electrical tingling in our bodies when they were in our presence, but they would never show themselves to us. So that is the one thing that is lacking for me. I would be more confident that they're actually coming from other planets if I had that piece of information too. But the messages we were given, and we asked 120 questions and received detailed answers, which are all in the book. I thought that was extraordinarily important.
Yes. Tell us about some of those questions, if you can, Kathleen, some of the things that were asked during your experiment, and the Council of Eight that you're talking about. Did you have the feeling that these were all beings of the same type, or that the council is made up of different types of beings from different parts of the galaxy, different types of time space?
There are different types. They told us that two of them are tall human-looking types. They've appeared in front of Kevin. So then there are two grays, one tall gray and one shorter gray, about 5 feet tall. Now I met the shorter gray, and he comes to see me. I can feel his presence. He's communicated with me telepathically, and he channeled through me one time.
Mm-hmm.
So I am aware of absolutely of his presence.
Mm-hmm.
There is a blue avian and a tall white.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have an insectoid
Mm-hmm.
too, or a mantis type?
Yes.
And I've seen him in my mind's eye, but not physically in my presence.
Mm-hmm.
There's also another type. The ones I've mentioned are all 5th and 6th dimensionals, but
Mhm.
there is a 9th dimensional. And the 9th dimensional says that there is a female counterpart who is his right side. So I don't know if that means he is half female and half male
Mhm.
or what, but these say that they no longer have a physical body. They haven't for a very long time.
Mhm.
But the reason for being here is that he is head counsel. So he has oversight of this quadrant of our galaxy,
Mhm.
and that they are a benevolent force
Mhm.
of our galaxy. They say that they are part of this federation that
Mhm.
you hear
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been told. I can't verify any of that, but I can verify what I have seen, what I do know from my own personal experience, and what we've been able to measure science with scientific instruments.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, I have a bit of a follow-up, if I may, and a question as well. So I'm thinking philosophies of ancient times and present times and magic and things like that. It's always been a council of 9. So I'm thinking, do we have it wrong?
Do we have it wrong? Yeah. And I think our jury system, the 12, that's based on our history with the Anunnaki. They had a council of 12. So these ideas come through. But do you think, Kathleen, do you think that some of these beings, because it may be difficult for them to physicalize, to sort of lower their vibrational aspect, it would be kind of like us, going into elemental territory. Do you think that because it is so difficult for them to do that, that just for expediency, they are using non-local communications, and that some of these beings may be phoning it in, so to speak? They may be using holographic techniques. I know that several of the experiencers that I have worked with in talking about the insectoids, they really don't like to travel. And they have very advanced, what you would call, I suppose, bilocation or astral projection, and they prefer to travel that way. So I guess depending on how advanced the species are, they may be able to travel with the speed of thought.
Yes, yes. Astrophysicist Rudy Shield, whom I know and have spoken with several times, hypothesizes that they do travel at the speed of thought. Now, with the Council of 8, there is a 9th one there, and that 9th one is a healer.
Oh.
So that's the female counterpart. And so perhaps there are 9, perhaps this is all part of what has always been with us. There are others who have tried to convince me that they are the 7 fallen angels. And I say, absolutely not, because we can feel them. And if you can actually feel their presence, you feel positivity. They are very positive. I can tell you that.
I agree.
He's definitely not that fallen angel.
Yeah, we can't move in fear in that way. It's absurd. We were not meant to do that. The time has come to cast away these artificial constructs and just and get in touch with the unity. Actually, we are really all one. I think it's when we engage in separateness that we have the kinds of social ills that we have
Yes.
going now. Have there been some messages that have been delivered by the council? Some things that maybe you have received, information you've received that you find meaningful?
Absolutely. You'll read 120 in my book, 120 questions and their answers. But one that is extraordinarily important is why are you here? And they said that we're here to guide you, to help you along in your development. And they said that they have been here before, dating back into history. They'll say, we planted your seed here and we've watched you grow. And you have reached this stage in your development in the past and you destroyed yourself. And we're not going to let it happen again. We're here. We don't want to intervene unless we absolutely have to. But we are here to try to guide you to change things so that you will survive this time, so that you will grow and develop and mature.
Well, we certainly are like a bunch of 3-year-olds walking around with flamethrowers. I mean, I think there is something to say as far as any kind of nuclear stuff that we have done or will do. We are really in danger of polluting our corner of the galaxy and possibly rupturing dimensions. I mean, who knows, right? Whatever it is, it's bad. These are the weapons of death that have been outlawed by sophisticated cultures that came before us. But is it the Mayan Indians that talk about? Is that politically correct? Can I say Mayan Indians? I don't know what to say anymore. The Mayan people, los Mayates, have an idea that we have been through this cycle of destruction and repair 5 times. We're like in the 5th age of Earth right now. And I know, Kathleen, you're probably getting many of these same messages from your experiencers, but the main message that keeps coming through is clean up your own backyard. Put on your big girl pants, your big boy pants, love each other as you were directed to, and clean up. We're supposed to be the guardians, I believe, of planet Earth. We're supposed to be looking out for all the life here. And we've been spectacularly unsuccessful at that.
Yes, another message that has been given to me by the ETs who took me for so many years, and something similar by the Council of 8. I don't think I have contact with the others. The Council of 8 is protecting me. And but the message is that our technological progress is out of sync with our spiritual development. And this is what can create the conditions for the destruction of our world and everything on it. And this is a major concern. So they're attempting to raise human consciousness and spirituality. And I think that's extraordinarily important, that if we are ever to move along and grow and develop.
It's essential. Yeah, it's essential. Do you... How have the ETs ever expressed how we deal with this lifting of human consciousness when we have such diversity on a scale, on this consciousness scale? We've got people at the very bottom who are in the incarnation wheel and keep not learning. And now we have, through various circumstances that have occurred, we seem to have a large part of the population that is clinging again to ancient fear-based concepts. How can we get everybody on board? It seems insurmountable to me that I could talk to somebody in that frame of mind, full of racism and hate, and be able to shift them.
Yes, it is extraordinarily difficult. And the only way that I understand that you can possibly do that is that you have to counteract the collective consciousness.
Mhm.
The ETs say there is a great deal of negativity in the collective consciousness, a great deal of fear. And of course, with the COVID pandemic, there's a great deal of sadness as well. All of those things are things that feed the lower vibrating negative entities that are not the ETs,
Yeah.
but are the things that would attach to people and grow and feed off that fear, off that loathing, etc., and the suffering. So it's extraordinarily important that we raise our own thoughts, each of us. We know that it works with houseplants.
Yes.
You can do experiments.
Mhm.
And if you give negativity to the plant, it will wither and die. But if it's raised in with the same amount of water in the same pot, the same kind of plant, and you give it love, it's going to grow and flourish. There have been scientific experiments done that indicate that this is true. What the ETs want us to do is to raise that collective consciousness and you can do this through guided meditation, to project love. So once you're able to keep yourself in that kind of mindset, and it's not easy. I did this over a period of time, and every so often I can feel that vibration dropping off again because I've been watching some really bad stuff on the news.
The news.
Or, just becoming involved in some negative things. Someone will write to me and upset me, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to make sure that I just wipe that away as soon as possible and meditate and raise that vibration and then take it out into the neighborhood. And spread it into the environment, to all of the animals that live, including humans, that live in my neighborhood within like a mile of where I am. And if everyone would do that, it will counteract the negativity that is in that collective consciousness. I see it. I live in Florida, so we have little geckos that are running everywhere. And normally they would be very frightened of humans, but I've projected love at them and they stop in their tracks and their little ruby red throats puff out. And I know that they feel happy. They're not fearful of me. I do it with plants. I do it with the cow pasture down the road from where I live. And the cows, if I project love toward them, will come toward me. So, it really does work.
It does. It does indeed. And, we can, as you say, this is sort of a grassroots movement. So what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is yes, we have social concerns, but if we begin with ourselves and begin elevating our own vibration, then we can affect the environment around us and other people, and then through the law of attraction, high vibrational people come towards us, and probably even if you haven't had an experience with an evolved being, by coming up to their level, like a step-up transformer, by coming up to their level, you put yourself in great likelihood of perhaps having some type of contact, just by being in the zone, I think.
Absolutely. And, anyone can develop this loving feeling, this higher vibration to send out into the neighborhood. You don't have to be an experiencer of contact to do that.
Go ahead.
I know we're coming up to the hour, so to speak. We still have at least 10 or 15 minutes. So, and I want you to have the chance to talk about your books, your website, your appearances as well. But a question has come to my mind. I think it's one of yours too. Is good and bad experiences at the hands of alien life forms. When I'm interviewed, some people want to know the bad stuff. And I don't have a lot of bad stuff, quite honestly. I have maybe a handful of experiences that were negative. Most have been positive. But they really want to try and ferret out the bad ones. Do you have an opinion on the good and the bad parts of that?
Now, in the study that I did with the Mutual UFO Network's Experiencer Research Team and Dr. Don C. Donderi and Dr. Michael Austin Melton, Denise Stoner and Craig
Denise
Lane,
Stoner, yeah.
they were all part of this. We had 516 participants and 2 phases. One was testing by Dr. Donderi. Well, one of the questions that we asked is about the nature of contact. And 10% had negative contact. 10% had highly positive contact. And the other 80% said that it was more businesslike. And neither positive nor negative. And the general attitude was related to the type of entity that they were in contact with at that particular time. And if you think about the human population, you have, people who are very up and wonderful and you enjoy being around them. And then you have the types who are just nasty and you don't want them in your house. It seems to be the same type. You have this small section of really nasty ones and a small section of highly benevolent ones. But in between, all of those that are just sort of like going to work.
Yeah.
The people you interact with during the day who are not too bad.
That makes, as above, so below. And that makes a lot of sense because it seems that they're doing like perfunctory checkups a lot of the time. Just perfunctory, this is not hurting, just checking in. So of course they're going to be businesslike. Kathleen, I have one question. I've never asked you this. And I'm going to assume that you've had some past life regressions or explored your past lives in some way. Do you have any memories or recalled memories of having lived in another planetary system, on another planet, where your body was maybe different?
Yes, I do. I don't normally talk about this.
Oh, sorry. I'm the Barbara Walters of ufology.
I was a gray
Yeah, okay.
another lifetime. I've also been a human many times.
Yeah.
I'm a past life regressionist, so I've undergone many past life regressions in my training and worked with other people. But yes, I had one that I remembered as a gray, and unfortunately, we were at war with reptilians, and the reptilians destroyed our planet, and we were driven under the ground, and so we were living underground in little pods, in tunnels, and it was a very sad existence. So it makes me feel very sympathetic toward grays who are coming here, seeking the emotions, seeking a way to reproduce again because they'd lost that ability.
Yeah. Well, there are many, many types of grays, as you know, and some of them, I think, Kathleen, are not really even fully biological. The little tiny ones are more drone-like because none of the people I work with can seem to get a solid thought out of them. Maybe a couple of words or a sentence. Isn't that right, Wes?
Yeah. I don't have a lot of experience with grays, mostly tall whites.
Yeah, they are not often very communicative, but we are related. According to Bashar, we are related to them, as I think all creation is related from panspermia or however. But, well, that's very interesting.
So we've got to...
we've got to do the business.
Got to do the business.
We got to do the business.
Kathleen, if
here's
you
my
would,
copy. Yay! Well worn.
if you could spend a few minutes telling us, telling our viewers how they can find you, what books to look for and where to get them, and upcoming appearances, that kind of thing, that'd be great. We'd be grateful.
I would be delighted. Well, my website is Kathleen with a K, Kathleen. You can see it right there on the screen, Marden. It's Kathleen-Marden.com. And you can read about my upcoming appearances there. There's a clickable link on every one of them. If you want to be there, I'll be in next weekend at the Butler Paranormal Conference in north of Pittsburgh,
Wow.
Pennsylvania, then out to McMinnville, then to Roswell, then to the MUFON Symposium in Denver,
Yes.
Exeter, New Hampshire in September, and a conference in Michigan in September. So several conferences. You can purchase autographed copies of all of my books there and read about them and what they're about. And also all of my books captured the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, Science Was Wrong, Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers, the Alien Abduction Files, Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted. That's a comprehensive guide to contact. And then the new one, Forbidden Knowledge,
Yay.
are all available on Amazon. You can order them from bookstores as well. So, that's there. I have a lot of exciting things coming up. I had a major role in a movie that's recently been done on my aunt and uncle, and you can see it on Discovery Plus. It's on Betty and Barney Hill.
Right.
So I was the on-camera expert in
Wonderful.
that.
Well, it's about time that they really got someone that was an expert.
And it is the most accurate that I have seen.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. Isn't that something? Well, Kathleen, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on this lovely spring day. And thank you for all that you do. Thank you for leading the Experience Your Research project, of which I was honored to be a part of. Thank you for all that you do. And I'm looking forward to bringing you back to Canada sometime before too long.
It was great being with you, and thank you so much. Such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you,
I
Kathleen.
admire
Thank you for spending time.
Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners and viewers out there. And remember, as we always say, we are not alone. We are not alone. You are watching Contact TV with your hosts, Lesley Mitchell Clark
And Wes Roberts.
exploring ufology, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts.